"Pyotr Petrovitch," she shouted, "at least you will protect us. Please get it into the head of this stupid creature that she has no right to talk like this to a well-born lady in distress, that there are laws about such things. I'll go to the Governor-General himself. She must be made to answer. In memory of my father's hospitality, protect his orphans." "Now then, madam, now then, if you please," Pyotr Petrovitch said, fending her off. "As you very well know, I never had the honour of making your father's acquaintance. Now then, madam, if you please." Someone went off into loud laughter. "I'm afraid I do not intend to become embroiled in your constant bickering with Amalia Ivanovna, madam. I'm here on a pressing matter of my own, and wish to speak at once with your stepdaughter, Sofya Ivanovna. That is correct, is it not? Now then, please will you let me through, madam?" Katerina Ivanovna stayed transfixed to the spot, as though she had been struck by a thunderbolt. She was unable to comprehend how Pyotr Petrovitch could thus repudiate her dear papa's hospitality. Having dreamed it up, she now believed in it devoutly. She was also shocked by Pyotr Petrovitch's tone of voice, which was dry, businesslike, and full of a kind of contemptuous menace. All the others also gradually fell silent upon his entrance, for in addition to the fact that this serious and businesslike man all too plainly failed to harmonize with the rest of the company, it was evident that he had arrived for some important reason, that only some extraordinary pressing motive could have induced him to join such company, and that consequently in a moment something was going to happen, some event was going to take place. Raskolnikov, who was standing beside Sonia, moved aside to make way for him. Pyotr Petrovitch seemed not to take the slightest notice of him. After a moment or two, Lebeziatnikov also appeared on the threshold. He did not come into the room, but remained where he was, with a peculiar look of curiosity that was almost one of astonishment. He lent an ear to what was being said, but for a long time seemed unable to comprehend any of it. "Forgive me for possibly interrupting you, but this is a rather serious matter," Pyotr Petrovitch observed, somewhat generally and without turning to anyone in particular. "I must say I am quite relieved that we have an audience. Amalia Ivanovna, I must ask you, as landlady of these apartments, to address particular attention to what I am now about to say to Sofya Ivanovna." "Sofya Ivanovna," he went on, turning directly to the thoroughly astonished and already frightened Sonia, "immediately after your visit to me in the room of my friend, Andrei Semyonovitch Lebeziatnikov, I discovered that a state credit bill belonging to me and possessing a value of 100 roubles was missing from my table. If by any manner of means you know and are able to tell us where it is now, then I give you my word of honour, and summon those present as witnesses, that I shall let the matter end there. If such is not the case, then I shall have no option but to resort to measures of a thoroughly serious nature, and then you will only have yourself to blame." Total silence reigned in the room. Even the crying children quietened down. Sonia stood in deathly pallor, staring at Luzin and unable to find a reply. It was as if she had not yet taken in what he had said. Several seconds went by. "Well, mademoiselle, what have you to say for yourself?" Luzin asked, looking fixedly at her. I don't know. I know nothing," Sonia said at last in a feeble voice. "You don't? You know nothing about it?" Luzin asked, keeping up the pressure, and again saying nothing for a few seconds. "Think, mademoiselle," he began sternly, but still as though he were trying to persuade her. "Consider the matter. I am prepared to give you some more time for reflection. Let me put it to you like this. If I were not so firmly convinced I am right, I should never, in the light of the experience I possess, have risked accusing you so directly, for I should myself, in a certain manner of speaking, be held answerable for making a direct, vocal, but false or let us simply say mistaken, accusation of that kind. Of that I'm aware. This morning I cashed, in order to meet certain personal expenses, a few 5% bonds in the nominal sum of 3,000 roubles. I have the receipt in my wallet. On arriving home, Andrei Semyonovitch will testify to this, I began to count the money, and having counted 2,300 roubles of it, put it away in my wallet, which I keep in the inside pocket of my frock coat. On the table there remain some 500 roubles in credit bills, among them 3 banknotes with the value of 100 roubles each. Just then you arrived, at my summons, and during all the time you were in my quarters you were in a state of extreme embarrassment, so much so that 3 times in the course of our conversation you got up in a hurry to be off somewhere, even though we had not finished talking. Andrei Semyonovitch is able to testify to all of this. I think, mademoiselle, you will probably not deny that I summoned you through the intermediacy of Andrei Semyonovitch for the sole and exclusive purpose of discussing with you the orphaned and helpless condition of your relative, Katerina Ivanovna, whose funeral banquet I was unable to attend, and the advantage there would be in organising for her benefit something in the nature of a subscription, lottery, or similar means of raising money. You thanked me, and even shed a few tears. I relate it all as it happened, in the first place, in order to refresh your memory, and in second place, in order to demonstrate to you that not the slightest detail has been effaced from my own memory. Thereupon I took from the table a 10-rouble banknote, and gave it to you on my own behalf for the protection of the interests of your relative, under the guise of first aid. All of this was observed by Andrei Semyonovitch. Then I accompanied you to the door, still in the same state of embarrassment, after which, having myself remained alone with Andrei Semyonovitch and talked with him for some 10 minutes or so, Andrei Semyonovitch departed. I returned to the table, where the money was still lying, with the object of counting it and putting it aside for a special purpose, as I had originally planned. To my surprise, one of the 100-rouble notes was not there. Consider, if you will, my position. I could not possibly suspect Andrei Semyonovitch. The very idea still makes me ashamed. Neither could I have been in error regarding the total, as a moment before you arrived, having finished the counting, I had found it to be correct. I think you will agree that in view of your embarrassment, your hurry to be gone, and the fact that you placed your hands on the table for a time, and finally taking into account your social position and the habits that you are associated with, I was, as it were, compelled with horror and against my will to form a suspicion, a cruel one, it is true, but one that is just. I wish to add, and to state again, that in spite of all my self-evident conviction that I am right, I realise that there is none the less present in the accusation I now make a certain risk for myself. But as you see, I have not let the matter lie. I have risen in protest, and will tell you the reason why. Solely because of your most flagrant ingratitude, madam. What? I invite you to visit me in the interests of your utterly impoverished relative. I give you 10 roubles out of charity, the most that I can afford, and this is how you repay me for it? No, madam, that is wrong. You must be taught a lesson. Consider, indeed, as your true friend, I beg of you, for I am the best friend you can hope for at this moment, come to your senses, otherwise there'll be no pleading with me. Well then? I stole nothing from you, Sonia whispered in horror. You gave me 10 roubles. Here, have them back. And from her pocket, Sonia produced a handkerchief, searched for the knot in it, untied it, took forth the 10-rouble bill, and stretched out her hand towards Lutzin. And you won't own up to the remaining 100 roubles? He said insistently and reproachfully, refusing to accept the banknote. Sonia gazed around her. Everyone was looking at her with such horrible, stern, mocking, hateful faces. She glanced at Raskolnikov. He was standing over by the wall with his arms folded and was watching her with a burning stare. "Oh, merciful Lord!" broke from Sonia. "Amalia Ivanovna, we shall have to let the police know about this, and so I must kindly ask you to send for the yard keeper now," Lutzin said softly and even tenderly. "Gott, der Barmherzige! I always knew she was stealing!" Amalia Ivanovna exclaimed, clasping her hands together. "Did you indeed?" Lutzin said, following this up. "So you must have had at least some sort of grounds for drawing such a conclusion. I beg you, my dearest Amalia Ivanovna, to remember those words of yours, which were uttered, I should add, in the presence of witnesses." A loud murmur of voices suddenly arose on all sides. Everyone stirred into action. "What?" Katerina Ivanovna suddenly shouted, coming to her senses. As though she had broken loose from some impediment, she flew at Lutzin. "What? Are you accusing her of theft? My Sonia! Oh, you villains! Villains!" And rushing over to Sonia, she embraced her in her withered arms as in a vice. "Sonia, how could you dare to accept 10 roubles from him? Oh, you silly idiot! Give it here! Give me those 10 roubles this instant! There!" And snatching the banknote out of Sonia's hands, Katerina Ivanovna crushed it into a ball and hurled it violently right in Lutzin's face. The paper pellet struck Lutzin on one eye and bounced back onto the floor. Amalia Ivanovna rushed to pick the money up. Pyotr Petrovitch lost his temper. "Restrain this mad woman!" he shouted. Just then a few more people appeared in the doorway at Lebeznatnikov's side, and peeping through among them were the 2 ladies from out of town. "What? Mad woman? Are you calling me a mad woman? You fool!" Katerina Ivanovna shrieked. "You're a fool, a canting, quibbling, stuff-gown, a despicable man. Sonia, take the money. Sonia, take the money from you? Sonia, a thief? Why, she's the one who'd give it to you, you fool!" And Katerina Ivanovna burst into hysterical laughter. "Look at the fool!" she cried, rushing hither and thither, pointing everyone's attention towards Lutzin. "What, you too?" she said, catching sight of the landlady. "Have you come here too, you sausage-maker's wife, to tell me that she was stealing, you miserable Prussian chicken leg in a crinoline? Oh, you monsters, you monsters! Why, she's been in this room all the time. As soon as she came back from seeing you, you despicable villain, she came in here and sat down beside me. Everyone saw her, right here, next to Rodion Romanovitch. Why don't you search her? If she hasn't been anywhere else, the money ought still to be on her. Go on, search her, search her. Only if you don't find anything, my dear, then I'm sorry, but you'll answer for it. I'll go to His Majesty, to the Tsar himself. I'll throw myself at his merciful feet, right now, today. I, an orphan, I'll be let in. You think I won't? You're wrong. I will. Is it because she's so meek and mild? Is that what you're counting on? Is that it? Well, I have a fiery temper. You'll come to grief. Go on, search her. Go on, search her. Why don't you? Search her." And in a frenzy, Katerina Ivanovna tugged at Pyotr Petrovitch, dragging him over to Sonia. "I'm prepared to assume complete responsibility, but you must calm yourself, madam. I can see only too well that you have a fiery temper. This is, what are you doing, madam?" Lutzin muttered. "This ought to be done in the presence of the police, though actually there are now more than enough witnesses. I am prepared, madam, but in any case it is difficult for a man on account of his sex. If perhaps Amalia Ivanovna were to lend her assistance, although in fact this is not the way to go about such matters. What are you doing, madam?" "Let anyone you like do it. Let anyone who wants to search her," Katerina Ivanovna shouted. "Sonia, turn out your pockets. Let them see. There, look, you monster, it's empty. That's the pocket her handkerchief within is empty. See? And there's the other pocket. There, you see? And Katerina Ivanovna, attacking both pockets, tore rather than turned them inside out, first one and then the other, exposing their linings. From the second pocket, however, A piece of paper suddenly leapt out, and, describing a parabola in the air, fell at Lutzin's feet. Everyone saw it. Many exclaimed out loud. Pyotr Petrovitch stooped down, retrieved it with 2 fingers from the floor, raised it for all to see, and unfolded it. It was 100-rouble banknote, folded in 8. Pyotr Petrovitch moved his arm round, showing the note to everyone. "Thief! Out of my apartments! Police! Police!" Amalia Ivanovna began to howl. "Nach Siberian with them!" Exclamations flew on every side. Raskolnikov said nothing, still keeping his gaze on Sonia and occasionally, but quickly, transferring it to Lutzin. Sonia was still standing on the same spot, as though in a trance. She did not even seem to be particularly surprised. Suddenly the colour flooded the whole of her face. She uttered a shriek and covered her face with her hands. "No, I didn't do it. I didn't take it. I don't know anything about it," she exclaimed in a heart-rending wail, and rushed over to Katerina Ivanovna. Katerina Ivanovna caught her to her bosom and pressed her tightly against it, as though with her chest she was trying to protect her from them all. "Sonia, Sonia, I don't believe it. Look, you see, I don't believe it," Katerina Ivanovna cried, in spite of all the manifest visibility with which she was confronted. Shaking her in her arms like an infant, kissing her innumerable times, catching her hands, kissing them too, almost sinking her teeth into them. "As if you would have taken it! Why, how stupid can these people be? Oh, merciful Lord, you're stupid! Stupid!" she shouted, addressing them all. "Why, you don't know what a heart this girl has, what sort of a girl this is. She'd take the money, why, she'd take off her last dress and sell it, go barefoot and give you the money if you needed it. That's the sort of girl she is. She took the yellow card because my children were dying of hunger. She sold herself for our sake. Oh, do you see? A fine funeral banquet we're holding for you. Oh, merciful Lord! But why are you all just standing there? Why don't you defend her? Rodion Romanovich, why are you not interceding for her? Do you believe it too? You're not one of you worth her little finger. Not one of you. Oh, good God! Defend her now at last." The weeping of the poor, consumptive, lonely Katerina Ivanovna had, it appeared, had a powerful effect on the audience. Such wretchedness, such suffering was there in this face distorted by pain, withered and consumptive, in these parched, blood-clotted lips, in this hoarsely shouting voice, in this violent weeping that was like the weeping of a child, in this trusting, childish, and at the same time despairing plea for someone to come to the defence, that everyone seemed to take pity on the unhappy woman. At any rate, Pyotr Petrovitch at once took pity. Madam, he exclaimed in an imposing voice, "the fact that this evidence has nothing to do with you. No one would venture to accuse you of complicity or prior intent, not least in view of the fact that it was you who brought it to light when you turned out her pockets. That means you do not surmise anything. I am most ready to take compassion if, as it were, destitution prompted Sofya Semyonovna to do what she did. But then, why, mademoiselle, were you unwilling to own up? Were you afraid of the disgrace? Of taking the first step? Did you lose your nerve, perchance? An understandable reaction, mademoiselle, a very understandable reaction. But then, why did you embark upon such misdeeds? Ladies and gentlemen," he cried, addressing all who were present, "ladies and gentlemen, out of a sense of compassion and, as it were, condolence, I am even now, in spite of the personal insults I have received, prepared to grant forgiveness. But may your present shame serve you as a lesson for the future, mademoiselle," he said, turning to Sonia. "And that being said, I shall take the matter no further. And, so be it. We'll drop the case. Enough." Pyotr Petrovitch took a surreptitious glance at Raskolnikov. Their gazes met. Raskolnikov's burning stare was ready to incinerate him. Katerina Ivanovna, meanwhile, seemed no longer to be aware of anything. She was embracing and kissing Sonia like a woman who had lost her mind. The children had also put their little arms around Sonia from all sides, and Polya, who did not really quite understand what it was all about, seemed to have drowned in tears altogether, shaking with strained sobs and hiding her pretty little face, swollen with weeping, on Sonia's shoulder. "How despicable this is!" a loud voice suddenly rang out from the doorway. Pyotr Petrovitch quickly looked round. "What a despicable thing to do!" Lebeziatnikov said again, looking him fixedly in the eye. Pyotr Petrovitch actually jumped. Everyone noticed this. They remembered it later on. Lebeziatnikov strode into the room. "And you dared to put me there as a witness," he said, going up to Pyotr Petrovitch. "What is the meaning of this? And what is the meaning of this, Andrei Semyonovitch? What are you talking about?" Lutzin muttered. "The meaning of it is that you're a slanderer. That's what I'm talking about," Lebeziatnikov said heatedly, looking at him sternly with his weak-sighted eyes. He was horribly angry. Raskolnikov fairly glued his eyes to him, as if he were waiting to catch and weigh his every word. Once again silence reigned. Pyotr Petrovitch almost seemed to lose his nerve, especially at that initial moment. "If you're talking to me," he began, with a hesitation in his speech, "what has got into you? Have you your wits about you?" "Yes, I have. And the fact is, you're a twister. Oh, how despicable this is! I've listened to it all. I've waited on purpose in order to understand it all, though I must confess that even now it doesn't seem quite logical, but what I can't understand is why you've done this." "What have I done? Stop talking in these rubbishy riddles of yours, or have you been drinking, possibly?" "It's you, you despicable man, who drink, for all I know. No, I'll never touch the stuff, because it's against my convictions. Can you imagine it? He himself gave that 100-rouble note to Sofya Semyonovna with his own hands. I saw him. I'm a witness. I'm willing to take the oath. It was him. Him, Lebeziatnikov said, turning to each and every person in the room. "Have you taken leave of your senses, you namby-pamby weakling?" Lutzin howled. "She herself here, in your presence, she herself here just now, in front of all these people, stated that apart from those 10 roubles she received nothing from me. In view of that fact, how could I possibly have given it to her? I saw it, Lebeziatnikov shouted, in confirmation of his claim, "and even though it's against my convictions, I would be prepared to swear to it on oath in any court of law you'd care to name, because I saw how you slipped it into her pocket on the sly, only I, like the fool I was, thought you'd done it as a good deed, when you were saying goodbye to her in the doorway, as she was turning away, and you were pressing her arm in one hand. With your other, your left one, you put the banknote into her pocket on the sly. I saw it. Lutzin turned pale. "You're talking rubbish," he exclaimed insolently. "And in any case, how could you possibly have been able to see the banknote from where you were standing, over there, by the window? You simply imagined it, with your weak-sighted eyes. You're raving." "No, I didn't imagine it. Even though I was standing far away, I saw it all of it. And even though you're right, and it was difficult to see the banknote from over by the window, I knew, because of the peculiar circumstances, knew for certain that it was a 100-rouble note. Because as you were giving Sofya Semyonovna the 10-rouble note, I saw it myself, you picked up a 100-rouble note from the table. I saw that because I was standing close to you at the time. And as a certain thought immediately occurred to me, I didn't forget about you holding that note. You folded it and held it clutched in your hand throughout the whole conversation. After a while, I forgot about it again. But when you got up, you transferred it from your right hand into your left and almost dropped it. At that moment, I remembered about it again, because the same thought came back to me, namely, that you were trying to do a good deed for her without my noticing it. You may imagine how closely I began to follow your movements. Well, and I saw you manage to slip the back note into her pocket. I saw it, and I would swear to it on oath. Lebeziatnikov was very nearly choking. From all sides, various assorted exclamations began to resound, most of which denoted astonishment. One or two, however, assumed a threatening nature. Everyone came crowding over to Pyotr Petrovitch. Katerina Ivanovna flung herself at Lebeziatnikov. "Andrei Semyonovitch, I have been mistaken in you. Defend her. You are the only one who is not against her. She's an orphan, and God has sent you to her. Andrei Semyonovitch, my darling man, my dear, dear fellow." And Katerina Ivanovna, almost unaware of what she was doing, threw herself on her knees in front of him. "Poppycock!" Luzin howled, enraged to a pitch of fury. "You talk nothing but poppycock, sir. Forgot, remembered, forgot. What sort of language is that? So I slipped it to on purpose, did I? Why, I'd like to know, for what purpose? What could I possibly have in common with that?" "For what purpose? That's what I myself would like to know. But if one thing is certain, it's that what I'm describing is a true fact. I am so far from being mistaken, you loathsome criminal man, that I even remember the question that occurred to me in this connection at the very time I was thanking you and shaking your hand. It was, why had you put your hand in her pocket on the sly? Or to be more precise, why had it been on the sly? Was it really only because you wanted to conceal it from me, knowing that I hold convictions of an opposite nature and reject all forms of private philanthropy as bringing about no radical cure? Well, I decided that you really were ashamed to be giving away such a mint of wealth in front of me, and also perhaps, I thought, he wants to make it a surprise for her. Give her a bit of a shock when she discovers a whole 100-rouble note in her pocket. Because some practitioners of philanthropy are very fond of spinning out their good deeds as much as they possibly can. I know from experience. And then I also had the idea that your intention was to put her to the test, that is to say, wait and see if she'd come and thank you for the money when she discovered it. After that I had the notion that you wanted to avoid effusions of gratitude, and, well, as the saying is, that the right hand should not know. Something like that, to put it briefly. Yes, well, all sorts of ideas came into my head, so I decided to think about it all properly later on. But even so, I thought it untactful to let on to you that I knew your secret. But then another question came into my head all of a sudden, involving the possibility that Sofya Semyonovna might quite easily lose the money before she noticed that she had it. And that was why I decided to come here, to ask her to come outside and tell her that she had 100 roubles put in her pocket. Well, on my way I looked in at the room of the Misses Kobilyadnikov in order to give them a copy of a general treatise on the positive method, and particularly in order to introduce them to Piderit's article, and also the one by Wagner. After that I came here, and what to do I found in progress. I mean, how could I possibly have all these thoughts and ideas if I hadn't seen you put the 100 roubles in her pocket? As Andrei Semyonovitch brought his wordy arguments to an end with this most logical of conclusions, he grew horribly fatigued, and the sweat even rolled down his face. Alas, he was unable to express himself properly in Russian, having no knowledge of any other language, with the result that he became completely drained of energy, and even seemed to grow thinner after his feat of lawmanship. All this notwithstanding, his oration produced an extremely marked effect. He had spoken with such heated conviction that everyone apparently believed him. Pyotr Petrovitch sensed that things were not going well for him. "What business is it of mine if you have some stupid question stuck in your head?" he exclaimed. "That's no proof, sir. You could have dreamt it all in your sleep, and that's the truth of it. Well, I tell you that you're lying, sir. You're lying and defaming my character in public because of some malicious grudge you got against me, and especially because you're annoyed that I wouldn't concur with your godless, free-thinking ideas about society. That's what." This eccentric flight was, however, of no benefit to Pyotr Petrovitch. Indeed, a ripple of disapproval was heard on every side. "Ah, so that's your tack now, is it?" Lebeziatnikov shouted. "You're spouting rubbish. Go on, call the police, and I'll take the oath. There's just one thing I don't understand. Why he risked his neck by doing something so despicable. Ah, base and wretched man." "I can explain why he did it, and if necessary I'll take the oath myself," Raskolnikov said at last in a firm voice, and he strode forward. He was, to all appearances, firm and composed. It was quite plain to everyone, simply from one glance, that he really did know what this was all about, and that the denouement was at hand. "It's all quite clear to me now," Raskolnikov went on, addressing Lebeziatnikov directly. "Right from the start of this episode I had my suspicions that there was some vile, dirty trick involved in all this. My suspicions were formed as a result of certain particular circumstances known to me alone, which I shall explain to everyone in a moment. They are what this is all about. It is you, Andrei Semyonovitch, who, with your invaluable testimony, have finally clarified the situation to me. I ask everyone to listen. This gentleman," he pointed at Luzin, "was recently seeking to marry a certain young lady, my sister in fact, Avdotya Romanovna Raskolnikov. Having arrived in St. Petersburg, however, he quarrelled with me the day before yesterday during our first interview, and I threw him out of my lodgings, as two people who were there will corroborate. This man is feeling very sorry for himself. I did not as yet know the day before yesterday that he was staying in these apartments, in your room, Andrei Semyonovitch, and that consequently on the very day of our quarrel, the day before yesterday, that is, he was a witness to my giving Katerina Ivanovna, the widow of the deceased, some money to help with the funeral expenses. He immediately wrote a letter to my mother, informing her that I had given all my money, not to Katerina Ivanovna, but to Sofya Semyonovna, and expressing himself in the most ignoble terms about Sofya Semyonovna's character, making veiled allusions about my relationship with her. All this, you understand, was done with the aim of stirring up trouble between myself and my mother and sister, in order to give them the idea that I had squandered their last remaining money, which they had sent me to help me, for dishonourable ends. Yesterday evening, in the presence of my mother and sister, and when he was also there, I re-established the truth, proving that I had given the funeral money to Katerina Ivanovna and not to Sofya Semyonovna, and that when I met Sofya Semyonovna the day before yesterday, I was not personally acquainted with her, nor had I ever seen her before. To this I added that he, Pyotr Petrovitch Luzin, in spite of all his virtues, was not worth the little finger of Sofya Semyonovna, on whom he had cast such evil aspersions. In response to his question as to whether I would allow Sofya Semyonovna to sit next to my sister, I replied that I had already done so, that very day. Filled with spite because my mother and sister would not fall out with me on account of his slanderous remarks, he began, one by one, to say the most outrageously insulting things to them. A decisive rift took place, and he was dismissed from the premises. All this happened yesterday evening. Now I request your particular attention. I think you will see that if he could prove that Sofya Semyonovna was a thief, he would also achieve his principal aim of demonstrating to my mother and sister that he had been more or less correct in his suspicions, that he had been right to lose his temper when I had put Sofya Semyonovna and my sister on the same level, that consequently by attacking me, he had been defending and preserving the honour of my sister and his wife-to-be. In short, by means of all this, he could once again stir up trouble between me and my family, once again, of course, in the hope of entering their good graces. All this is quite apart from the fact that he was taking his personal revenge on me, as he had reason to suppose that the honour and happiness of Sofya Semyonovna are very valuable to me. That's all that he was after. That's my understanding of this business. That was the only reason for it, and there can have been no other." Thus, or almost thus, did Raskolnikov conclude his address, frequently interrupted by exclamations of his audience, who were, however, listening with close attention. But in spite of all the interruptions, he spoke calmly, incisively, clearly, precisely, and firmly. His incisive voice, his tone of conviction, and the stern expression on his face had an extremely powerful effect on all those present. Yes, it's true," Lebeziatnikov affirmed enthusiastically. "It must be true, because he made a special point of asking me, as soon as Sofya Semyonovna came into the room, whether you were there, whether I'd seen you among Katerina Ivanovna's guests. He made me go over to the window with him in order to ask the question, which he put to me in secret. That means that the very thing he wanted was for you to be here. It's true, it's all true." Luzin said nothing, and smiled contemptuously. He was, however, very pale. He seemed to be trying to think of how he could extricate himself from this predicament. However much he might have wanted to give the whole thing up for lost and go away, this was hardly possible at the present moment. It would have been tantamount to an open admission that the accusations that had been brought against him were justified, and that he really had been guilty of defaming Sonia Semyonovna's character. What was more, the audience, already quite drunken, was growing extremely restless. The supply clerk, though he had not entirely grasped what was going on, was shouting louder than any of them, proposing certain measures for Luzin that were of a decidedly unpleasant nature. There were, however, some who were not drunk. People came crowding and gathering from all the rooms. All three Poles were terribly excited and kept showering him with cries of "Panie Lasdak," which they accompanied with threats, Polish style. Sonia had been listening with intense concentration, but she too seemed not to have grasped everything, as though she were awakening out of a trance. All she seemed set on was not to remove her eyes from Raskolnikov, sensing that in him lay her only protection. Katerina Ivanovna was breathing hoarsely and with difficulty, and was, it appeared, in a state of fearful exhaustion. The most uncomprehending of them all, though, was Amalia Ivanovna, who, mouth agape, had not been able to make anything of this latest part of the talk whatsoever. All she could see was that Pyotr Petrovitch had somehow been caught in a fix. Raskolnikov started to ask them all to listen again, but they wouldn't let him finish. They were all shouting, crowding around Luzin with oaths and threats. But Pyotr Petrovitch was not abashed. Realizing that his attempt to incriminate Sonia had completely failed, he resorted to downright brazenness. "Now then, ladies and gentlemen, now then, don't jostle me, let me pass," he said, as he made his way through the crowd. "And kindly stop threatening me. I assure you that you will get nowhere that way. I am no coward. On the contrary, ladies and gentlemen, it is you who will have to answer for having obstructed a criminal process by means of force. The she-thief has been unmasked, and more than so, and I shall prosecute. The members of the court will not be so blind, or drunk, and they will not believe the two dyed-in-the-wool God-haters, insurrectionists and free-thinkers who accused me from motives of personal vengeance, which they in their stupidity admit. Yes, now then, if you please." "I don't want to see you in my room again. Please move out. Consider everything finished between us, and when I think that efforts I've made to explain it all to him for a whole 2 weeks. Why, I myself told you earlier that I was going. When you are trying to detain me now, so I'll merely add that you're a fool. I wish you success in curing your mental deficiency and your weak-sighted eyes. Now then, if you please, ladies and gentlemen." He squeezed his way through, but the supply clerk did not intend to let him get away so easily, with nothing but oaths. He snatched up a glass tumbler from the table, brandished it in the air, and threw it at Pyotr Petrovitch. But the tumbler went flying straight at Amalia Ivanovna, and struck her. She uttered a shriek, and the supply clerk, who had lost his balance while swinging his arm, fell heavily under the table. Pyotr Petrovitch returned to his room, and half an hour later he was gone. Sonia, being of a timid disposition, had been aware long before now that her good name could be more easily destroyed than most people's, and that anyone who cared to could wound her practically without fear of retribution. Yet even so, right up until this very moment, she had imagined that it might somehow be possible for her to avoid disaster by being meek and cautious and obedient to all and sundry. Great, therefore, was her disillusionment. She could, of course, have borne it all with patience and almost without a murmur, even this. Her initial suffering had, however, been too great. In spite of her sense of triumph and vindication, when her initial fear and shock had passed, when she clearly understood and perceived the nature of the whole incident, her feeling of helplessness and personal mortification had constricted her heart with pain. She had begun to have a hysterical attack. At last, unable to endure any more, she had rushed out of the room and run off home. And this had taken place almost immediately after Lutzin's departure. As for Amalia Ivanovna, when, amidst the loud laughter of those present, the glass had struck her, she too, at last, had enough of the hangover of someone else's feast, to quote the Russian proverb. With a shriek like a banshee, she hurled herself at Katerina Ivanovna, considering her to be to blame for everything. "Out of these apartments! Now, march!" And with these words she began to snatch up all the possessions of Katerina Ivanovna that fell within her grasp, throwing them on the floor. Almost crushed and defeated as it was, very nearly fainting, pale, gasping for breath, Katerina Ivanovna leapt from the bed, on which she just collapsed in exhaustion, and rushed at Amalia Ivanovna. But the struggle was all too unequal. Amalia Ivanovna repulsed her as though she were a feather. "What? Is it not enough that I've been godlessly slandered? Must this creature attack me as well? What? Am I to be driven from my lodgings on the day of my husband's funeral, after offering you my hospitality, onto the street with my orphans? And where will I go?" the poor woman wailed, sobbing and choking for breath. "Oh, God!" she shouted suddenly, her eyes flashing. "Is there really no justice? Who are you supposed to look after if not us orphans? But we shall see. There are justice and truth on earth. There are. I'll find them. Wait for a moment, you godless creature. Polya, wait here with the children. I'll be back. Wait for me, even if it's out in the street. We'll see if there's any justice upon earth." And casting over her head the same green drap-de-dames shawl that Marmeladov had described in his narrative, Katerina Ivanovna squeezed her way through the drunk and disorderly crowd of tenants who were still crowding the room, and with a wail ran out into the street in tears, with the ill-defined object of somewhere finding justice without delay and at whatever cost. In terror, Polya hid with the children in the corner on the travelling box, where, embracing the two little ones, and trembling all over, she began to await her mother's return. Amalia Ivanovna rushed about the room, screeching, wailing, hurling everything that came within her grasp onto the floor, and generally making an infernal din. The tenants were bawling things in all directions, this way and that, some giving their frank opinion of what had taken place, others shouting and quarrelling, and others, yet again, starting to sing songs. "And now it's my turn," Raskolnikov thought. "Very well, Sofya Semyonovna, let's see what you'll say to this." And he set off for Sonia's apartment.